What I want to show you today is a technique that I use for cutting out electrical boxes that I really haven't used for a number of years. This is the technique that I used before I actually had a drywall router, and it works really well. What I use is a framer square and a drywall utility saw, and that's all I really need to accurately mark and cut out my electrical boxes. So I'm using the square as my measuring tool because obviously there's measurements on the square. And what I want is a measurement to the bottom of the box and the top of the box. So I'm going to keep the square squarely on the floor, and then I'm going to get this measurement. And it's 13 1/4 and 17. So I'm going to write that on the floor. 13 1/4 and 17. So now I know my height. Now I want to find the edges. So I take the square and I go right to the edge of that box. See how that's nice and even with the edge of the box? Now I'm going to write on the floor, I'm going to mark on the floor where that is. So I just put a line and I put a little circle around it. So that's that edge of the box. I take my square, bring it to the other edge, and I do the same thing. So 13 1/4 and 17 is my height, and there's both edges of my box. This is a piece of drywall that I'm going to be hanging here, and you can see that when I butt it into this corner, it doesn't fit that wall perfectly. So that's what I mean. If I had taken a measurement from the drywall here, this wall, transferred to the sheet, I would be off by almost 1/4 of an inch on my measurement. And that's enough to require me to actually have to do a patch on that outlet because I would be off by 1/4 of an inch. Alright, now I'm going to tack the drywall in place. I've got it as tight into that corner as I can get it, but I do have a little gap on the top. Now I'm only going to tack it in place. So that by that I mean I'm only going to put screws along the top edge. So by only fastening the top, I don't have a lot of pressure against that electrical box. Because don't forget, it sticks out about 1/2 inch. So if I put a screw along the bottom, it's going to put a lot of pressure on it. And then as I'm cutting it, it's going to bust out. So this eliminates that potential problem. I have the piece of drywall tacked into place. Now I'm using my framer square to transfer these measurements onto the piece of drywall. So I take my square and I go right against that little mark I put on the floor, marking the right side of my box. And then I'm just going to put a line right along the edge of the square. And then I'm going to mark out 13 1/4. 13 1/4. And the top is 17. So that's the right side of the box. Now I'm going to move my square over to mark the left side of the box. 13 1/4 and 17. Now all I have to do is take my utility saw and cut along those marks. But as I'm cutting, I'm going to feel for the edge of the box with my saw so that I know I'm nice and tight against that plastic of the box. This is a utility saw that I'm going to be using to do the cutting. It's kind of a thin saw. You know, you can buy them with a much bulkier blade, much more blunt end. This is the type of saw that I like to use because it basically goes right to a nice sharp point. I'm able to puncture the drywall very easily and maneuver around these corners easily because it is a nice thin blade. Okay. I put the saw through and immediately I could feel that I was right at the edge. So I'm just riding that blade right along the edge of the electrical box. perfect cut.